Hello there, everyone. Welcome back to Circling Seattle Sports. This is another new show. It feels like every other week we're starting a new show. This is for Jake, as you can see Jake here. Um, Jake's suggestion among the about I don't know how many you sent me. I'm gonna assume it was around 20. Around the
Approximately
tw
15,000. Yeah.
well, yes. Around their name suggestions for a Seahawks show was circling the nest, and I thought, well, it goes with the whole circling Seattle sports thing, and I like that one the best. There are some other great ones. Perhaps the wordplay was too big for my itty bitty little brain, but I like circling the nest the best. So here we are. This is going to be our Seahawks show. Obviously, the Seahawks are not in the postseason, as this is being recorded the Sunday for Wild Card Weekend. Last I checked, I think the Bills were doing well against the Broncos. I don't care too much. Um, I'm not upbowing my Knicks right now. But yeah, I mean the Seahawks season was unique. We'll have a few topics today, and I'm sure Jake and I will discuss further. And he's got things he wants to write about as well, and he's done a great job in doing so since joining us. Since I didn't really poach him from Lookout Landing because he still does stuff with our friends at Lookout Landing. But yeah, Jake. I mean, this is a season that I know this topic itself is controversial as well, uh, which everything is controversial on the internet nowadays, right? Um, but I came into this year just kind of wanting to see some growth, some change. I wasn't expecting you to get past the divisional round like you haven't done in what, about 10 years at this point.
Feels like it.
I Yeah, I just wanted to see a solid year under Mike McDonald, and I feel like we got that. Obviously, what's the most frustrating to me is how close you were to a playoff spot and you lose to the effectively the strength of opponent tiebreaker to the Rams. Um, but yeah, that was my thought on the season. That'll be our first topic of the day is just the thoughts on the 2024 season for Seattle. I mean, it was another year where you have a winning record. Yes, I think the Seahawks made history as one of the few teams, or maybe only, I think it was few. I don't think they were the only team to win 10 games and then not make the postseason. Yeah, I don't know. Obviously you wrote about it week in and week out. What did you take from this Seattle season, and what are your thoughts overall before we get into some other smaller topics regarding the year?
I think the big thing is that there's a big difference emotionally between like watching the games and then actually, seeing the final score and especially the box score and the individual players and their contributions. Like watching the games felt very emotional, very intense, we'll say. With I think a lot of fans can agree with that. Especially in certain plays, misplays, miscues, things like that. But then you go to the box score, and you know, uh, for all the criticism that Geno Smith has gotten this year, almost every game he's out there putting up like a 93, 97 passer rating. So it's like, well, the metrics show that he's, fine, actually, above average. But emotionally, it feels very bad. And I think that kind of was a continuing theme like of the year, to the point where yeah, it's a 10-win team, 10-7 under first year head coach and a first year offensive coordinator coming from college ball, which is a very different ball game. um, that's not disappointing. I mean, it's disappointing, right? Because you want to make the postseason, especially when you win 10 games and you have that kind of really tough middle stretch. But it's not, I think it's above expectations, really. Um, at least the most reasonable ones. Um, I think this season saw the new kind of system of the new head coach really uh, that it can work, and that if a couple things break the Seahawks way in just a couple games, I think this could have been a playoff team. Maybe not a team that was going to make a deep run, but certainly a team that was going to be there. In January.
Yeah, and it's funny you mention, kind of the luck factor because I think one of the various Seahawks beat writers that I follow think it was Bob Condotta with the Seattle Times quote tweeted there was I don't know how I'm not super big into knowledge for the deeper analytics, right? But there was someone was able to put together some numbers about essentially luck and the ball bouncing your way. And Seattle, I think, was like second to last or last. They were one of the two in the NFL this year in that regard. Only I think the team that was either last or the second to last was the Packers, which fascinating enough.
Yeah.
Also, another team that did well, but they were obviously in a crowded NFC North. Um, yeah, no, I mean, yeah, I think we've encapsulated it well what the feelings around this season were. Obviously, with Mike McDonald, the talk was his defense and how his defense was going to look. With Pete Carroll, obviously, he was a defensive guy, and you think about Pete Carroll. I think his legacy, unless he does something crazy wherever he goes and coaches now, right? At least in NFL wise, because obviously he had a great tenure at USC, will always be the Legion of Boom era, you know. Um, and so, excuse me. Um, to see some of the ways that this defense, and you wrote about it, like as the editor, I would see it. Um, seeing that stretch of the first three games, obviously those first three games got some scrutiny because they were against, you know, lesser teams per se.
Hmm.
But then when they would play well, the defense looks great. Leonard Williams had a great year, and he was criminally underrated. Um, getting snubbed for a lot of different accolades and such here at the end of the year. It was really fun to see more Devin Witherspoon, even if he wasn't racking up interceptions. And the linebacker, maybe we can talk about that more next week or during the offseason. But the linebacker situation and how that played out throughout the course of the year was fascinating. Because I liked Tyrese Knight out of college, but it always seemed like he was going to be a development guy that needed some more time to kind of get right. And then he slotted in, and he seemed to do pretty well in the snaps that he got. So anyway,
Hello there, everybody. Charles Hamaker here with Circling Seattle Sports. I'm joined by Jen Barnes of Rough and Tumble that we happen to be at right now.
Yeah.
Jen, why don't you talk to me a little bit about what we're announcing today, which is our partnership.
I'm so excited about this. First of all, I just want to say thank you. I think all of us here at Rough and Tumble are big fans of what you and your team at Circling Seattle Sports does. And so, I know you know this, but when you came to me with this idea, it just seemed pretty natural. And it's not just me. I think a lot of people in the sports community in Seattle also really respect you and your team. So it's exciting to kind of see these two things melding together, and we're really excited to start implementing some of the things and then hopefully seeing you guys a little bit more often.
Yeah, and so with what Jen says about seeing us more often, we've got a few things in the works, but you'll see watch parties here. We'd like to do a few different of our community drives, which you'll hear about here in a little bit. From now, we've got to make our announcements one at a time. I can't drop everything.
Not everything
right.
all at once.
But this has been a home for a lot of our team, whether it's myself, our friend, our photographer Liz is behind the camera. Liz is here often, so our team has kind of adopted this place kind of like our own since I saw you at our soft launch. So, it's been great to have that support. And in a lot of ways, and part of the reason I wanted to do this was the Rough and Tumble embodies a lot of what Circling Seattle Sports wants to do. Obviously with women's sports, with the storm and the rain, but just being, having the game on, every game on.
Yep.
How much of that, did you see a line kind of even before this idea was mentioned when I first met you?
I think it's always felt like that. I mean, you and your team were here on opening night, and you just feel like you're part of the space, so it felt like really natural. And the fact that you actually cover all of the sports really makes your group stand out. So you are always covering all the rain games, all the storm games. UW women's softball, UW women's basketball, UW women's hockey. We love it. So all of those things, and obviously passionate M's fans, passionate Hawks fans, and passionate Kraken and Sounders fans. So really, from our perspective, those two things meshed really well.
So, I mean, you heard it from Jen herself, but this will be our home for all of these events, whether it's you can't make it to these games at home, we're always going to direct you to Rough and Tumble, and obviously the games on the road as well. All these, I mean, we're talking about the rain, they've got their schedule out finally, but this will be our home for that.
Great.
The Storm games on the road, this is our home.
Yeah.
For all intents and purposes.
I love it.
And when I mentioned it to Jen, when I first had this idea come up, I had this idea come up wearing a pink wig.
Yes, you did.
Ahead of Megan Rapinoe's final regular season home game for the Reign this past year.
Yeah.
I told her it's because I wanted this to feel genuine.
Yep.
I wanted a connection to feel genuine, and it does. So that's what this is. Rough and Tumble is the home of Circling Seattle Sports, and I'm so excited to finally announce this partnership.
I can't wait.